I'm so enthusiastic about what we can do if we can protect our gains and if we can then build on those gains with transit, with housing, with film, with technology, helping vulnerable people to be able to be all that they want to be, making sure everybody's included in the future success of this city. Those things excite me because I think this is one of the most exciting places in the world to live.
Mayor John Tory has been the mayor of the city since 2014. The 67-year-old had previously committed to being a two-term mayor, but backed away from that in recent years, suggesting that a third term was up for consideration. And today, he announced he'll give it another go in the upcoming October 24th municipal election. Now, if Tory wins, he will become Toronto's longest-serving mayor, but consider the last 2 years. The pandemic paused progress on projects and plans, and that, too, has been the case for some of the mayor's priorities. It's been the case for many of us. So we want to take a look at some of the big issues in the city and what issues we can expect to be highlighted during the municipal campaign. Affordable housing, transit, homelessness, just to name a few. Joining us with analysis and perspective, Walied Khogali Ali, a community and affordable housing advocate in Toronto Centre, and Shelagh Pizey Allen, executive director with TTC Riders.ca. Thank you both so much for joining us. I want to start off by saying that Mayor Tory was asked today about some of the issues that will be part of his campaign moving forward, and he said he will save it for the campaign. So Walied, let me start with you as someone who is passionate and an advocate, particularly for affordable housing in this city, and there was an affordable housing announcement today. Has Mayor Tory, in your opinion, earned another term?
Great question, Christina. I actually want to, thank you for having this very important conversation about, the rhetoric and the facts. Actually came from a meeting, a community-wide meeting held by various neighborhood associations in Toronto Centre to talk about developments in our neighborhoods, in our backyards, and who's leading these developments, who's profiting from these developments. And the facts reveal a story, a narrative that we must, communicate, which is the applications that were being put forward to the city. And you can find this information on the city website. One of 20 active development project mentions affordable housing units, and that is very problematic. Like I'm looking at the research, and what it reveals is that in total, with the 20 developments, and this is applications that have happened over the past 180 days to the city of Toronto, there are 4,316 total units, with 32 being outlined as affordable housing. How does that make sense? How are the policies and regulations allowing for developments of housing to happen in the city with no affordable housing or deeply affordable housing, as we must distinguish? Because folks need to know what affordable housing actually means and what those definitions and who qualifies.
Walied, when we take a look at Mayor Tory over the last 8 years and some of the affordable housing announcements made, and of course, Deputy Mayor Anna Bailau is responsible as the chair of his affordable housing or housing committee here in the city. Has he met some of the targets? There is certainly more to do, but has he made this city more affordable? Keeping in mind, no matter how much money you make at your job, what your level of income is, people here who want to buy a home have to pay 2 land transfer taxes, 1 provincially and 1 municipally. And in a province like Calgary, or a city like Calgary, Alberta, for example, people don't have to, and they're much more able to afford homes.
Well, the city of Toronto, the residents of Toronto gave this mayor 2 terms. And let's not forget that he is the former leader of the Progressive Conservative Party. Doug Ford is a fellow member of the same party. The relationships, the political relationships, and the fact that they've got all this time and they haven't delivered on the housing stock that's needed, on the policy changes that are required so that more people are able to access not just affordable housing, but home ownership, the rent to own that our federal government loves to speak about. We need to implement those practices today. We can't talk about it as rhetoric without commitments and action. And I actually don't believe the mayor has delivered and he can blame the pandemic, he can blame, various other factors, but it was under his watch. And I'm just wondering if the city is ready for another 4 years.
Okay, let me go to, thanks, Walied. Let me go to Shelagh for just a moment. And when we take a look at public transit and affordability, I recognize you have some concerns. When we take a look at and I've always had some concerns, of course, transit is part of the lifeblood of this city. Has Mayor Tory met some of the goals, or at least some of the needs when it comes to transit, considering back in 2014, he started out with this plan for Smart Track. So that didn't come to fruition. But now what we have seen is transit in the city in terms of subways taken over by the province with this Ontario line. So what do you make of another 4 years of Mayor Tory when it comes to transit?
Yeah, that's a great two important pieces of his record to point to. I think that the mayor has started some good things, but he hasn't seen them through. And he's taken baby steps where we really need bold transformation. And so a couple of examples are the Fare Pass program, a discount for low-income people in Toronto that was approved in 2016. Last election, TTC Riders surveyed all the candidates. The mayor committed to seeing it through. It wasn't fully funded this year, and it's frankly not affordable enough to begin with. Instead, fare enforcement officers have increased during Mayor Tory's tenure. The King Street Transit pilot, the mayor went to bat for this project. It's a really important step, and we've seen one bus lane installed in Toronto along Eglinton, East Kingston, and Morningside. And then nothing else. There was supposed to be a bus lane installed on Jane Street this fall. What happened to it? We're told that we may not see transit priority across all the routes we need it on until 2032, and that's just not fast enough. Smart Track, as you mentioned, it's a great idea. It was supposed to open last year in 2021, according to the election promise. But without fare integration in Toronto, without a flat fare where you can ride GO, TTC, and Union Pearson Express for a single flat fare, it won't bring as much advantage as it could to the city of Toronto. And really the biggest problem facing Toronto today is ridership. We're still at about 50% of pre-pandemic ridership and 60% on the bus network, actually. And the mayor has secured emergency funding from the provincial and federal governments in fits and starts. And the TTC is actually facing serious deficits for the next 2 years. So we need a mayor who will fix the transit funding model, raise more revenues from the City of Toronto to invest in the TTC, but also secure ongoing funding from the provincial and federal governments. Because it might shock you to know this, but 40% of the TTC fleet is actually sitting in the garage right now. We have the buses we need to increase service, but we don't have the funding to do so.
But also ridership had dropped throughout the pandemic, Shelagh. And something I want to ask you about when it comes to Fare Pass in 2016. So council adopted that program several years ago. But, for the mayor to bring programs to fruition, it does take the support of council. So some of his ideas, which he champions, how responsible is the mayor when it comes to bringing these programs to fruition? When we look at the Fare Pass program, when we take a look at the mayor who has, and I'm not defending him, but when we take a look at the pandemic, who had, there is a huge funding shortfall for the TTC and had pushed the federal and provincial governments for help. How much is the mayor responsible for when we consider as well that the pandemic sidelined some of his goals?
Yeah, that's a great point. The pandemic has really changed things, but it's also revealed the problems that already existed. So the reason that revenue for transit has plummeted so deeply, and we're facing deficits, is that we rely too much on fares. The TTC is really an outlier in the global north. We're one of the least subsidized major transit systems in the U.S. and Canada, and that meant we're more vulnerable to the pandemic. We've lost more revenue that we were counting on because riders pay for the majority of the TTC budget. So that needed to change before the pandemic. And if it had been funded differently, we wouldn't have faced the shock of the pandemic to city finances. You're right that there are 25 councillors who do have a say in city policies, but the mayor needs to be a champion. And we've lost a lot in Toronto because the mayor hasn't stood up for our transit system. We lost $1.1 billion when the current provincial government reneged on a promise to double the gas tax transfer. We lost the $1.50 GO TTC co-fare discount 2 years ago. People are paying hundreds more dollars a year to ride TTC and Go, and that kind of integration is something we need for a program like Smart Track to succeed. The mayor has lost control of rapid transit in our city. To his credit, he has allocated $1.2 billion to the Eglinton East LRT that had been raised through the Scarborough subway levy, and that's a really important project, but he also needs to continue to champion it to other levels of government. We need a strong voice for transit from the mayor, and we also need a bus mayor. Now that the province has taken control of many rapid transit projects, we need that focus on bus lanes and more bus service.
Okay, Sheila. And Walied, unfortunately, that's all the time we have. We will have you both back on again in what is a long 7 months of campaign on housing. I know, Walied, this is something that you are passionate about, and there have been consistent announcements here in the city, but something you take a look at is the action, the shovels in the ground. So we will continue to take a close look at that. Thank you both. As it's getting underway soon. In May, I believe the mayor said today the campaign period begins. So thank you both tonight.